Hello and welcome to Africa Update, another exciting episode of Africa Update reaching you on Trust TV in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. Happy New Year. When we come back, we have some more for you. Please do stay with us. Welcome back. It's South Africa Update on Trust TV and I'm your host, Chiamaka Nwafor. Again, Happy New Year. I hope you had a wonderful celebration. And this week on the program, we'll be looking at African economies, a review into 2024, or rather a review of 2024 and an outlook and insight into 2025. Now, just a bit of a background from reports from the IMF and other financial establishments. In 2024, Africa's GDP totaled $2.8 trillion, representing the combined output of 1.4 billion people. However, economic activity is heavily concentrated in 5 countries, namely South Africa, Egypt, Algeria, Nigeria, and Ethiopia, which together account for half of the continent's GDP. These nations have a combined GDP of $1.4 trillion and represents 44% of Africa's population, which is equivalent to 569 million people. Now, in the studio, joining me to further discuss this is Aliyu, Alias. He's an economist, amongst other many things. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update today to discuss the economy.
Thank you for having me.
Now, these big 5 economies that we have, South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, Algeria, Ethiopia, some of the unique characteristics that they have is that for South Africa, there's a strong financial sector and relies on mining, especially platinum, gold, and chromium, contributing 8% to its GDP. Egypt benefits from its control of the Suez Canal, generating substantial revenue, and tourism is another significant contributor. Yes, the Great Pyramids of Gaza and the likes of it. Then Nigeria and Algeria are oil and gas exporters, with Algeria focusing on natural gas and Nigeria on crude oil. And for Ethiopia, primarily an agricultural economy relies on exports like coffee. So imagine a country just what it exports is just coffee, and it's one of the big 5 economies in Africa, meaning that for us here in Nigeria, we could actually do much more. But let me now go back to my guests. You're the economist, so tell us basically, what's your take on the economy in Africa in 2024?
Right, I think against all odds, we have tried our best in Africa. Perhaps we were not able to meet up the IMF projection, even our own internal projection, but it's not also bad because, because we are able, we are coming from challenges such as COVID-19 and what have you, 2020, 2021, 2022. So we are trying to see the real economy working, and that's why we are at this level. And I think all I just see is that the challenges of having only 5 countries doing well in Africa, it is a serious problem, and it accounts for a whole lot of, high percentage of businesses. So I think all Africa need to do more because our numbers should be a positive momentum for us to actually do more in terms of business. As you also look at the countries you reel out, mentioning from South Africa, I think for me, if you ask me, I think South Africa is much more better economically because, they are doing well in financial. That's a serious one. That means they can easily manage their economy very well to their own positive and to a good positive externalities. That's a good one. Then they still do more into mine, which is natural resources. And if you look at that one,
sorry, when you say financials, you mean the banking sector?
Yes, the banking sector, which is a good one. That means they're actually using, that means there's a business going on, there's a good trade going on, there's a loan, a lot of things are working for them, and that's a good sign for an economy. So then if you go to let's look at Ethiopia, I think that's a very good one too, because if you look at Nigeria, we're having more money in service sector compared to agriculture and industry, which is not a good one, because some of them could be portfolio investment that may not translate to good foreign direct investment or to bringing about employment. They could be traded on capital markets, and you say, yeah, that will not help the economy. But for like Ethiopia, they are doing exports, of agricultural produce. That's a very good one. And for Suez Canal, who do not want to take advantage of the environment? So because there's a passage, for Egypt. So they are doing more of taxation, more of tourism. They are attracting wealth. Then let's now come back to oil. Nigeria and Algeria. For me, when you say people are making it from oil, I just see it as a, how do I call it, an economy that doesn't really get its place very well. Because you know you must diversify to an extent to make sure that your economy have it. Because if there's any shock from OPEC, it will affect the economy.
But if, let's move away from Africa and go down to Europe.
Right.
Russia, one of their major sources of income is the fact that they export gas. Literally, and that's what they used to, you know, for some of these countries to power their lights and all that comes from Russia. That's why when the Ukraine war happened, they were floundering looking for other alternatives.
That's a refined natural gas and refined petroleum products.
Okay.
If not for Dangote that just came in, and do we sell any refined products? You know, it's what the implication is that when people come from outside, buy your, you know, we call it rentier economy. We are managing rentier economy before, whereby people will come and buy from you. They determine how much they buy. You know, they take it and refine. They still determine how much you are going to buy. So you don't have any benefit. So, and you know, when you don't have that value addition, just like Dangote is doing now, we also hear that the Port Harcourt refinery, the small one, so to say, the old one, so to say, is also helping. So that's when you now say you are benefiting from. Look at South Africa. That mining, they are not selling raw. You know, they are adding value to it. The value chain is well tapped. Until Africa starts to tap that value chain, that's when we benefit. All those other African countries that is not performing well, I can tell you they have natural resources, but it's being exported raw. These are the problem.
Okay, so yes, from our intro, we see that these 5 countries make $1.4 trillion, which is half of the $2.8 trillion that Africa is out of 50-something countries.
That's not good at all.
Countries.
That's not good at all. That's a serious issue. And I don't know how we are going to move beyond that level. And that's why AU have a lot of challenges beyond even ECOWAS and other regional, but there must be an integration whereby there could be trade will flourish. Because in between Africa, if there's a good trade in between Africa, it would have even give us much more income compared to what we are seeing. And you could see that those that are actually doing well, they're also high in population. So does it mean population is now a determinant of productivity, which is not correct? Country could be as like 5 million and they can generate more. Look at country like UK.
If we say that population, then I think Nigeria, being the most populous black nation, should outdo South Africa.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't think it's a population.
No, what I'm trying to say is that if you look at it very well, if you look at Ethiopia, look at Egypt, look at Nigeria, even look at Algeria, there's population in these countries. So maybe I'm now saying that shouldn't be a factor. You know, you could be a small country and you could be doing very, very fine if you manage what you are doing very well.
Yes, some of the rich countries in the world, as we see, the Netherlands apparently, where
Qatar,
you know, all those countries, they don't have very much population, but they manage their resources very well.
And it's because they actually industrialize. That's another thing we need to look at. How many countries, if you even look at the best countries now, there are countries that are a bit industrialized. South Africa, you know, I think they are the best industrialized country in Africa. Egypt follows suit, then the giant of Africa. If at all, giants without really translating
we're
it.
Still giants.
We are still giants, but we must
stick to it.
If you are giants, you should have do well more than Egypt and South Africa.
We're getting there. Life happens to all of us,
we hope
we're
so.
Getting back there.
We hope so.
Now we've brought up issue of diversification. So now, how can we diversify our economy to reduce reliance on specific sectors like oil, gas, or agriculture, and of course ensure more balanced growth across the continent? Because this disparity, where it looks like just five countries are carrying the entire continent, is
when we say diversification, I think we should go back to our originality. And what's our originality is agriculture. So if we can do well, I think we have all left agriculture because oil is giving us more money, and South Africa too, because maybe financial sector and mining is giving them more money.
Congo with the diamonds.
We need to go back to agriculture because, you know, if you look at it, agriculture is the highest employer of labor globally. Even in Nigeria is highest up till now. Agriculture also, you know, it's more of production, you know, beyond service sector. So it's going to be a real sector economy that will galvanize. So I think if at all we want to divert, please go back to the original first. Mechanize agriculture in Africa. You know, look at Ukraine. Before they have their issue, only Ukraine. Do you know how many tons of maize, of wheat, and whatever they can they will be turning out.
That issue affected food production across globally. The world.
Just
one country.
Just one country. So you mentioned of Russia too. Look at how they are doing well in those. Russia is not only relying on their oil alone. They only take advantage of it to build other things, and it now become their own strong comparative advantage. So for us, we need to do more. We should go back to agriculture.
Now we have this Africa continental free trade era, after, as pronounced. Now, how far has this thing been implemented to help Africa? Because I believe its aim is to help this continent do well, like the EU, I believe, where there's free trade across all the countries in the continent.
Right. I think we should hold Nigeria, South Africa responsible.
Oh, the big two.
Yes, now. Okay. Because if you look at South Africa is very, very, they are very, very skeptical. You know why? They don't want their country to become a dumping ground. So they are now looking at it. In fact, go and check. I'm not sure they sign everything. They are giving some conditions that don't bring this, you bring this. So they're actually dragging. Then Nigeria has only tapped once or something. That's what they say we do. Nigeria has not even really taken advantage of African free trade area. But I see Ghana has took serious advantage of it. You see them export. Even Rwanda, they're taking advantage of it until these big 2 or 3 come together and say no. But for me, truly, I wouldn't want Nigeria to take the FCTA hook, line, and sinker. I want them to be selective because you cannot say they should be importing textile to Nigeria. They should be importing shoe to Nigeria. No, you must identify. I will tolerate this. I will not tolerate. That's what makes your economy strong. Because of that, we now make your infant industry grow. Because if we have textile material, we have material for shoemaking, and you now allow all other countries. In fact, I was in Rwanda, and when I got to Rwanda, there are 13 million population, and I saw Volkswagen producing in Rwanda. And I was now asking myself, how many people in this Rwanda I am that can afford to buy new car from Volkswagen? And I think, this is the aim of African Free Trade Area. That means you can produce in Rwanda and bring and come and sell it to 200 million, and with 100 million potential buyer of cars in Nigeria. Those are the things that we need to look into very well, because you cannot say that everybody free trade area. And I'm sure that's why that's why South Africa is always very, very skeptical and accepting, because they wouldn't want you to come and drop everything. So in a place of, instead of us denying that African free trade area, why not be selective? That this is what you bring to my own country, this is what you will not bring to my own country. Because I also have that reason at the back end that if you look at Ghana, most Nigerian companies have gone to Ghana, especially tire companies and all of them. They are producing tire in Ghana, and they are bringing it back to Nigeria. So sometimes you need to be selective and say, no, Nigeria have more cars, usage. Because of that, if you are selling any produce that is maybe tire, come and produce in my country, or you don't bring it into my country. I think that's where the route we should go, rather than taking slow or dragging, and not allow the African free trade area to actually function as it was. If it functions properly, I think we'll have that experience that Europe are having, whereby you could have free movement and you can bring goods and services in and out. That will help even galvanize and put our economy in a good shape in Africa.
Okay, now, so let's go back and hone down a bit to sub-Saharan Africa. Now we see that it's experiencing an economic rebound, with private consumption rising and inflation declining. Now growth is expected to increase from 2.6 in 2023 to 3.4 in 2024 and to 3.8 in 2025. The look on your face is making me wonder, have we been able to achieve that before I even continue?
Well, it's a projection even then, because that's now, I'm not sure, even the entire Africa is around 2.8 or so. So I'm not sure we have actually achieved that aim. Then, when you are talking about statistics, sometimes we have to come to reality. What about poverty level? How well have we actually done in terms of poverty? Poverty continues to rise in sub-Saharan Africa, and then they are telling us that the economy is actually going well. If you look at even the difference between inflation, let's look at Nigeria as an example. We could say that maybe for two consecutive months we have a slow in terms of inflation. It doesn't really translate to well-being. And I can even say those 2 consecutive months, it was because of our farm produce. Because it's become, when you are harvesting, there is likelihood that it will be surplus, and from there, it will affect the price. I don't think Sub-Saharan Africa are at the pedestal that they're actually placing it to. I don't think the economy is as robust as the way we are. And when they say recovery, yes, every country in the whole world is actually recovering from the challenges we had.
From the report here, it seems the recovery is fragile and it's been impacted by global uncertainties, rising debt, obligations, natural disasters.
And you also remember that we have political instability.
The conflict.
Exactly. I mean, especially in this West Africa. We have a lot of, and there's a way military government seem to be good. Because you can see they are praising some of them, that they are doing fine. But in the long run, you see that it's actually not really a better economy. So for me, I think there is need for Sub-Saharan Africa to do more in terms of output so that we can have a better economy.
All right, we've been talking with Aliyu Alias, talking about African economics, and we've been doing a 2024 review. Now, when we come back from the break, we'll be going to the forecast into 2025. What do we expect for African economies? So stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on Africa Update here on Trust TV. Now, we've been talking about African economies, a review of 2024. And now we're in 2025. What is the outlook? What is the forecast? So from reports, it says that the outlook for African economy for the year is promising, with the continent's economy projected to grow at a rate of 4.3%. These are all projections. This growth will be driven by various factors, including the recovery of global trade, increased investment in infrastructure, and the growth of the services sector. Remember, earlier we talked about services sector for Nigeria. Now, for the regional economic outlook, East Africa is expected to be the fastest growing region with a GDP growth rate of 5.7%. West Africa's growth is projected to increase from 4.2% in 2024 to 4.4% in 2025. North Africa's growth is expected to rise from 3.6% in 2024 to 4.2% in 2025. Now, before I go on, let me come back to my guest in the studio. Mr. Alias, so tell me, from all I've just said now, what do you take? I mean, is this something, is there hope?
Right. I think it's, for Africa, we're always very, very hopeful.
Yeah, we're hopeful
perhaps we have not seen any natural disaster or force majeure that could cause a destabilization. So going forward, I think it's a promising one because for we in West Africa, I can say it's a very good promising one because with the coming of Dangote, I think we wouldn't know how significant that is in terms of the economy. Because if you look at West Africa now, that means we now have a trade, or they call balance of trade and balance of payment. When those things are being churned out, you are going to have a good balance of payment, a good balance of trade, because now Dangote Petrochemical is going to be exporting a lot of things. So I'm even doubting if East Africa can do better than West Africa. And on the premise that...
You're saying this West Africa because mostly for Nigeria?
Yes, mostly for Nigeria. What happens to Nigeria affects virtually all West Africa.
Oh, I see a proud Nigerian over there.
That's the truth, because we are good in number, we have purchasing power, and we have such a big investment. And with the way President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is also trying to push up the tax reform bill, if it also go, it will also engender much more development. But if you look at the East Africa, I think they are much more of tourism. Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda.
Kenya with its coffee and teas.
Yes, if you don't look at all of them, you discover that they have been doing it. But West Africa is actually coming to the stream more. But it's a good one for Africa generally. But we must also go back to agriculture, because from the analysis, I saw that service sector is still going to help more in Africa. But it's not bad, because if you look at South Africa, their major one, which is financial, is service sector, right? So we can also take advantage of that. But we must grow a real sector in terms of much more production, much more export, much more agricultural produce. Then ultimately, we must start to add value to our produce that we are selling. It's very, very key. If you keep taking everything raw, perhaps it will even discourage. But if you add value, it will have create employment opportunity, it will have helped your GDP, it will have helped you to have robust, economy in the Committee of Nations.
Okay, so now some of the major things that is likely to affect these things, of course, which we know is mostly inflation,
Right.
death, and climate change.
Wow. Those three things are not in our hands. That's the problem.
The death is
The
not
death is not in our hand. The climate change is not
No,
in
I
our
can
hand.
understand climate change.
Yes. The debt is not in our hand.
How? We go out borrowing.
We are owing already. So you have to service it.
Okay.
So that's it. So it's not, you don't think about what you are even going to borrow, because when you borrow now, you may have a moratorium of not to pay back now. But when you are owing before, you are expected to pay. Look at the proposed Nigerian budget. The debt servicing is taking about 8 trillion, while the capital expenditure is taking 7%, 7 trillion. Is that not surprising? You know, that's
more than the entire...
Exactly. That's what you're using to service debt is more than what you to benefit the whole Nigeria. You know, when we talk about capital projects, that simply means education, health, road, other social infrastructure. That means your debt servicing is going to be higher. So we are in it already.
So the question is, first, now, before we talk about how to come out of this, how did we get there so that we don't even repeat the same mistake and cycle?
Well, let me surprise you. I don't see anything bad in debt. In fact, I want Nigeria to go and owe big, to get the debt big. You know why?
Why?
Thank you. We have discovered that our debts, to solve our housing problem is 5 trillion. That we
Trillion
need.
naira or dollars?
Trillion naira.
Okay.
Now to solve our road problem is 7 trillion.
We put in the currency.
7 trillion naira. It
Wow.
should be naira. So to solve the I've mentioned road health, maybe it's 10. I'm projecting now. So why not go and look for this money?
But then
And solve it once and for all and keep paying. You know why? The best big economy in the world are the highest debtor.
yes, we know that
So
America
what is
owes,
now
and we know all
Japan,
these things. We know that
China,
they owe, yes.
they are
But the
owing.
question is, when they go borrowing for some of these things, oftentimes it's not necessarily used for those
That's
things.
where we are now going. That's where what we should get right is that it should be project-tied loan, not borrowing for recurrent expenditure.
'Cause
I will agree with that.
Let's come back home it now, down
Right.
to our neighbors over here. They just had an election last year.
Yes.
That was Ghana. And one of the reasons why the ruling party really didn't make it was because of that loan.
I don't think it's loan. It's because of bad economic management. You know, when we talk about loan, in fact, show me a businessman who will not get money.
Yes,
show me a
get a loan,
country who will not get money to really do. Imagine if they solve only housing sector. That every Nigerian have affordable home.
Housing.
But we keep housing. But we keep, pushing all this. So for me, I want to, if you want to borrow, please borrow big and solve the problem once and for all. Not that you borrow small and use it, you veer the money to something else. So for me, I don't see why I will stop Africans from borrowing, but Africa should borrow with their senses and not borrow in a way that you will now borrow to engender the upcoming children life. They should come and meet the facility. Right. It is what we have in that
Yes, it's not borrowing money for something that they will still not come to meet.
Come to meet.
I still now have to pay.
You have to borrow for people to come and meet the facility. Okay, a good example. Without trying to support any government, you can still go and see the railway, Abuja, Kaduna. It's still there now. But the government will actually establish it. They are out of government. You don't expect that railway to pay itself. It is the social activities and benefits that will reflect in the economy that will actually say yes, it is positive.
Okay.
So
all right. So our time is far well spent. What are your projections, you as an economist, for Africa? And of course, let's hone it down to our home country, Nigeria.
I think Africa as a whole will get better compared to last year, because if you look at most of the economy, people are getting, the presidents are getting themselves well. And what happened to Ghana is they show that the president that is coming want to do well. Our president in Nigeria is also trying to, rejig the economy, even though he's biting very hard. But the thing is, it's also trying to bringing all this together, it's a promising one for Nigeria and Africa in 2025.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Aliyu Alias, for your time here on Africa Updates, giving us, insights into the African economy, and of course, hoping you learned something and maybe how to diversify your interest in business for the year 2025. That's the much we have for you this Wednesday on Africa Updates. Same time, same place next week. Don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms for more news, programs, and documentaries. I am your host, Chiamaka Nwafor.